Yeah, and I have the same fear, Obi. I need those 5 to carry over because you never know. I might need them next year.
Hey, I'm Obi. That said, and we are drinking from the Garden Host, your favorite podcast. Find us wherever you get podcasts, whether it's Google or Apple or the big one out there, Spotify. We're there. Go on, like us, subscribe, download, listen, share it with your friends, give us feedback. We love it. Ed, how are you?
I'm doing great. Getting ready for the weekend.
Excellent. And as you were bragging, you have a bunch of 3-day weekends coming up. So good on you.
Yes. I have nothing to do except, I don't know, nothing to do.
Good. Nobody go work out this month because Ed's got nothing to do and the gym's closed.
That's right. No, it's not closed. It's working. Okay. You're just not going to see me there. That's all.
All right. Okay. That's good. So I know I asked for feedback and I got all sorts of feedback from our last episode that I wanted to just throw at you and discuss. And then, we'll see where the show goes after that. So first, I got feedback from my brother who usually agrees with me and thinks you're, out of your mind. But
as most people think.
But he almost kind of sort of gave you a pass on the bagel thing. He said,
wow.
He said, if you're going to get crap bagels or freeze your bagels like Ed's doing, you can toast them. And he didn't agree on my hard stance against crap bagels. He said, sometimes you just got to get a crap bagel, which I don't buy. So there you go. Somebody agreed with you a little bit.
So I got feedback from somebody who adamantly disagreed with you.
Oh, well, they're wrong.
Well, my wife adamantly disagreed with you and said, if that guy wants to come here and get your daughter a bagel every freaking morning, then feel free. Otherwise, I'm going to freeze them. Okay.
I would suggest if you're going to go get frozen sandwiches, then get frozen sandwiches and microwave them. But that's just me. I'm not going to argue too adamantly with your wife or your mother, but you bring your father or your brother out here.
I'm just saying. I got feedback too. Okay. And they agreed with, well, actually, by the way, first of all, there was nothing to agree with me on. I'm not eating the toasted bagel. I'm not the one. I was just adamant. I was just merely saying that I had to prepare it. So there's no agreeing or disagreeing with me. I'm a neutral party. You're the one that lost your shit about the bagel.
This is true. And then we had somebody comment on Facebook that I was right. But the best part about that commenter is he's a friend of a friend. Like, he's a Facebook friend who I've met a couple of times, but mostly I know him as one of my buddies, high school best friends. So that was awesome to know he's listening. Not going to mention his name. He doesn't have a good nickname. You know who you are. I know you've listened to a couple other things that I've been involved in. So always appreciate the follows and the listening. And the feedback, just A, agreeing with me is awesome. But B, keep listening. We appreciate it.
See, I think you like the feedback when people agree with you.
Of course I do.
I actually think you filter the feedback. I bet you we get more feedback than you let on.
No, I wish we got more feedback than I let on. And then I would probably filter it to what I think makes the best stuff. But right now, I spew all the feedback. And wait till you see, I got more feedback to talk about because one was just totally weird. I don't know if it was related to our show, and I don't know if it was sent to me in error. But I got a TikTok sent to me. And I think it was related to our show, but I'm not positive. But it came from your nemesis.
Well, awesome.
Your nemesis sent a TikTok explaining that when you get older, you don't need heated floors in your bathroom because you're going to be, if you're a woman, you're going to have your own personal heat waves that come across. And that, as a matter of fact, what you need is cooling things in your house, not heating things. So it was a funny TikTok. I shared it with my wife, because it's true for her. But it was just, I don't know why she sent it to me. I don't know why your nemesis sent me that TikTok. I don't know if it's something we discussed, was how my wife now likes it cold when she used to like it hot, or if she just thought it'd be something that was, accidentally my name came up.
I think it had. I think that's actually it's unique feedback in that it was given via a TikTok with no context. But I do believe that is feedback on the whole idea that our houses are ice boxes these days.
Okay. All right. Yes. Good. Good. I think that was a green feedback. I thought it was as well. But it's just good. Thank you to your nemesis then.
So I think that feedback was just acknowledgement that they listened to the show and that, yes, as you get older, the house is an ice box.
Excellent. And thank you. And if you want to say mean things about Ed's nemesis, go right ahead. We appreciate it. At least I do. And then I can filter out any nice things to say about Ed.
Well, my nemesis doesn't say anything nice about me. There's nothing to filter.
This is true. This is true. So that was 3 pieces of feedback from that last episode that I received. Plus I don't know what it did numbers wise, but feedback wise, that's the best piece of best feedback we've ever gotten. I'm wrong, and I can make your daughter bagels, buying her fresh bagels every morning.
That's right.
I'm wrong in that you should never get crappy bagels, but you're right. If you get crappy bagels, you can do it. I'm right from a listener who's further away than our general feedback providers. So great stuff. I have something completely different now to talk about.
All right. I also appreciate that the feedback we got on that episode was really about a throwaway segment on the podcast. Like, it's not even what we were trying to talk about, meant to talk about. You just lost your shit, and then that's what we get the feedback on.
Well, because, we have been told, one piece of feedback we got is that we are best when we're unprepared.
Well, I was unprepared to see you act like a freaking 2-year-old.
5-year-old.
I don't know about that.
I'm going to go 5.
Okay, maybe.
2-year-olds can't eat bagels.
That's true. That's true.
There we go. So I'm driving with my kid the other day. Now, my kids have musical tastes that are very expansive and definitely have been influenced by me. And so they have some classic rock in there. And, my son likes the Beatles. A senior in high school, big Beatles fan. So we got.
By the way, does he still have that girlfriend?
Yeah, she's back with her. Yeah.
Yeah, he should hold on to her because he ain't getting any other girls listening to the Beatles.
Well, here's the thing. He listens to a lot of stuff, but he does listen to the Beatles. Growing up, whether they were your favorite band or not, the Beatles, they were kind of considered the greatest rock band of all time. They had all these #1 hits and the British invasion and everything. And so, GOAT is a term that's thrown around in sports a lot. You got the LeBron versus the Jordan people as a big one and whatever. We're not going to go down that path. Hate that conversation in sports, especially on team sports, but let me digress. Do you think, now he said he doesn't think the Beatles are considered the greatest of all time anymore. And I was just like, he threw Michael Jackson out there, somebody who people might now consider the greatest of all time. What are your thoughts on, not your favorite, or who you think is the best? Because that's a different conversation. Who do you think the world is going right now as the greatest rock band of all time, if it's not the Beatles?
Well, first of all, it's kind of a silly conversation because your question was, who is the greatest rock band of all time if it's not the Beatles? It is the Beatles. And so there is no conversation. See, that's the problem with that whole question. It's like, it's a better question if you're like, who's the greatest rock band of all time if it's not Fleetwood Mac? Like, then you can have a conversation, right? Like, actually, there's a lot of room to have a conversation if you start with Fleetwood Mac. But when you start with the Beatles, there's really no room for that. But here's my theory on that, because me personally, the Beatles, I guess I can recognize the Beatles for their influence they've had. I've heard some talk about how good of musicians they actually are. I don't know. Seemed like they played I don't even know anything about guitars, but like seems like they played one or two chords. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe they played 10 chords. I don't know. Ringo Starr, like a great drummer, not sure, but I heard he could keep a good beat. I don't know. But the point of the matter is I think two things. One, very influential, but two, I think you almost get canceled if you come out like your son and say they're not the greatest rock band. So I think you have to. So I think everyone just gets in lockstep and goes along with the program.
So hopefully we'll get some feedback on this, because what he said and what he seemed to suggest to me was that we are showing our Gen X age with that answer. That it's not what it was. It's almost like, Elvis.
Okay, so yeah, no, I think he's got a point. So I know you don't want to talk about LeBron and Jordan, and we really won't, but I want to bring that up as a point here. Because when I was young, a teenager, early 20s, the conversation was Bill Russell and Jordan, who was the greatest ever, right? And there were people who actually believed Bill Russell was the best of all time, and they would talk about his rings and stuff, right? So that's an older generation. Then Jordan is my generation, and now the younger generation is LeBron. And it's really obvious. Like, go on social media. Whoever thinks Jordan's the greatest, I can tell you how old they are. I can tell you when they graduate high school. I can tell you the same thing about LeBron fans, and I think it's the same with the Beatles. If you say the Beatles are the greatest, I could probably tell you when you graduated high school. Or if you thought Elvis. And so now maybe it's,
that's
I don't know,
thing.
a Boogie. Maybe it's a Boogie.
That is the thing. It's not to me that I'm going to go up, and I do appreciate how amazing of a guitarist George Harrison was. But that aside, I'm not up here going to plant my flag in the ground on the Beatles, because they're not my favorite band of all time by any stretch. And so I think music has that where it's different, where you can recognize that the Beatles were great and look at what they did and here's their influence. Boom, but they're not my favorite. But I want to know who has taken over, who is involved in that conversation that's been around. Like my son said, maybe Michael Jackson gets involved in that conversation. I know there's a lot of people who will already argue between Michael Jackson and Prince just from our generation, having grown up with them. So I want to know, and I realize I'm asking an old man like myself, and we have no idea. Is Taylor Swift now the GOAT, or is she just the best of what's happening right now?
Well, okay. So, let's go down this road a little bit, right? So, first of all, Prince is generally renowned as a musical genius. He played every instrument on his first, maybe two albums, definitely his first album. I think I was just reading the other day because I think it was the anniversary of his death or his birth or something.
Well, 27 instruments on one of his albums he played.
Yeah, 20. That's what I was going to say. It wasn't. Not only did he play every instrument, but there was 27 instruments. So that's amazing. That's got it. Michael Jackson didn't play shit.
I don't know. He played voice.
Yeah, he played voice and he played dance. That was it, right? Which, by the way, hell of a performer. Don't get me wrong. I wanted the Beat It jacket. I wanted the Thriller jacket. So okay, I was there, but Michael Jackson can't be the greatest, right? Prince could be, but then we're talking bands, solo artists. But I will tell you this: Keith Richards was on Howard Stern 2 weeks ago being interviewed. One thing that was amazing, I got to share with everybody about Keith Richards. Not that he's still alive, but something else. But also, he said the Beatles were like the gold standard. He said they wanted to be like the Beatles. Like the Rolling Stones might be one of the greatest rock bands of all time. Well, they are one of the greatest, but they might be the greatest, right? Yet the guitarist said the Beatles, right? So there's another argument for the Beatles. But did you know, you might have known this, most people don't, Keith Richards played a 5-string guitar. Did you know that? He removed the string from his guitar and he played a 5-string guitar because he liked the sound.
I did not know that, but I also know that for a very long time, I thought guitars only had 5 strings. So I wonder if that was, and by the time I was in high school, I knew they had 6. But I remember in elementary school thinking guitars had only 5 strings, and then somebody having to correct me that guitar actually had 6 strings.
Well, maybe you were listening to a lot of Jumpin' Jack Flash growing up.
Hey, paint it black, you know.
So that would be my argument for the Beatles. But then let's go where this argument could go if we talk generational, right? So my daughter last weekend went to the A Boogie Ice Spice concert at Prudential Center.
Is that like the Boogie Woogie Man from like?
Yeah, exactly. A Boogie. Who the hell is that? Right? Never heard of him. Well, it was sold out.
Okay, go Boogie.
It was trouble getting tickets to the A Boogie show. So there are kids who, and so when I mentioned to my younger daughter, who's in high school, that, hey, your sister's going to go to A Boogie Woogie or whatever, she goes, oh, A Boogie, yeah, this song, she started naming off his songs. So people know this stuff. And so I think that's the other problem. Like, I'm not saying A Boogie's the greatest. I don't think my kids are either, but we don't even know who he is. So how could we even have an accurate conversation about the greatest rock bands of all time if we don't even know all the music?
I agree with you there, but I would say this is how I would counter that. There are certain artists that have been around for or have come and gone already in our child's lifetimes that we know. And the fact that we know them is probably a sign that maybe they're worth talking about. Kanye, as crazy as he is, you and I know him. Like, we know he's around.
Yeah, but don't we know him because he's crazy?
I know his music. I know some Kanye songs. I have a few Kanye songs I really like. You know?
I know Kanye songs, but I didn't know they were Kanye songs. So what does that say about the artist?
There's a lot of that. I think but that's one of those things where I think that is normal for great artists, where people are not maybe into that genre or that generation, and they know a song and so goes, oh, and you're like, who sings this song? And then the people look at you like, that's Metallica. You're like, oh, okay. Granted, obviously the guy going, that's Metallica, but yeah, I think that's kind of normal.
Okay, so I got something for you, Obi, because I listened to a lot of Howard Stern. He interviews musicians, and he marvels about how they develop riffs and things like that. And if you think about that, developing a riff is I can't do it, right? You got to be talented. Now, but also innovating in music, right? So Jimi Hendrix innovated in music, right?
Right.
You could say, whoever started feedback on the guitar or the pedals, they innovated. Keith Richards taking one string off, innovated, right? So I think if you're an innovator, that probably puts you in a category that could get you to be the greatest, I would think, right?
I would think.
Okay, so being an innovator is important. But what about a rock band today? Okay, think about this for a second. Rock and roll started with Elvis. Maybe you could go back to the blues, right? Because a lot of bands were influenced by that.
Chuck Berry's out there. We had that whole conversation about people in the 50s, and there was
yeah, right. So that's 70 years ago. So let's just say rock started 70 years ago. If you're able to write an original song today, 70 years after the genre was invented, isn't that pretty goddamn talented? That you're able to write everything. Isn't everything else already taken? Like, no one invents math anymore. You know why you don't invent math? It's already taken. Somebody already invented it. So if you're inventing something new in music, isn't that next level stuff?
I would say yes, but I would also say that we are seeing lots of, I think stuff, right? You will hear people freak out now, people who are even younger than us. Oh, so-and-so shouldn't be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I'll look at that person and go, that's because you want to call it, you want the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame to be the Guitar Rock Hall of Fame, because this other electronic music, or it doesn't have a guitar, so it's not. So either rock and roll really is dead because the guitar stuff is less creative and new, or you got to let the music expand. And we really need to get a music history buff on this for us. Because
all right, well, so let's talk about, is greatest also longevity? The Rolling Stones just released an album. It hit number one. They're the only rock band ever to have a number one album in 6 different decades.
I think that number one what? I mean, when number one overall selling album and
Number one on the Billboard chart, apparently. I'm just telling you what I'm hearing. I'm not an expert, but
okay.
So number one, 6 decades in a row. Like that, does that make you greater than the Beatles? I don't know. And I'm not here to argue for the Stones.
Right.
So going back to my longevity piece. So here's guys who put original music out in their 60th year together. That's got to be pretty amazing too. Because you would think they would just revert back to the shit they did 60 years ago and think it was new.
Well, I haven't listened to the album. Maybe it isn't new. You know, that's the other thing. Is it something new or is it just
It's new. Critics like it. They would be all over it if it was a copy. It's not a Star Wars movie, you know, those are copies.
Okay.
So that's where I stand, Obi, on the whole music greatest of all time. I think it's generational. So you're never going to get your son to agree with me just because he's coming from a different perspective and he's listened to different things. So I think that's part of the problem. Just like no one who agrees with LeBron is ever going to think Jordan was better. Like there's nothing you could do to change their mind. Like some things, it's same with politics. Some things, there's nothing you can say that's going to change somebody's mind. And I think the same thing is with music.
So here is the other thing that when my son said this to me, I said, okay, all right. Well, I don't know what time frame, what in 200 years from our music people are going to remember. But I choose 200 years because in 1756 to 1791, which was more than 200 years ago, but about 200 years ago, was the life of Mozart, right? And so he was the greatest of his time. And for people, he's a particular type of classical musical composer. Like, I don't know what that type is. But so he's as big as classical as their smaller sizes, one of which would be about the size of rock and roll. And Mozart is the greatest. But there's other guys who did some great things during his time frame. I'm sure we just don't know about him at all, unless you're like a diehard classical music fan. And even then, you're probably moving on to other guys like Bach and Brahms and whatever. So will it be the Beatles? Will it be somebody else who comes out in the next 50 years to be rock and roll? Or have we reached another whole thing that isn't rock and roll? But, it does feel to me at least that the Beatles have outlasted Sinatra and Elvis and anyone else really, sorry, even to the Rolling Stones in terms of the cultural zeitgeist. I use that word right? I'm going to tag that word. That's going to hashtag zeitgeist.
Oh, that's going to get us new listeners for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. He said zeitgeist.
Probably not the type of listeners that want to listen to us, but we'll get them.
Yeah, well, good. People want to talk about Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart from 1756 to 1791. Knew that off the top of my head. There was no Googling involved.
Yeah, that's interesting with the Mozart. I think, again, that was original shit. You could write classical music today, but no one's doing it. Why? Because it's probably all been written.
Others would argue that there's a lot of stuff that was done then is still involved in music today.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I mean, you will watch the Boston Pops. You hear all that stuff. My point is, I think it's the original piece. I think it's the innovators, right? I think that's where you go. So I think that's why the Beatles are. I'm just going to keep going back to that. I think it's the innovators that are. I was making the argument before, if you're still making original shit, doesn't that make you great? I don't think it does. I think if you're the innovator, because there's still always some form of imitation, even if it's original, you're still copying somebody.
Okay. So the short answer is there might be somebody, but who is performing right now that the younger generation could have a valid argument on, because there are probably some very innovative folks who are out right now. But you and I aren't connected enough to know that answer. And my son, because he's got my musical taste, doesn't know either.
That's correct.
Okay. So you were no help in me getting the answer, although I do think we had a quite robust zeitgeistic conversation. But yeah, there was no good answers. So
Other than it's not a boogie.
it's not
And
a boogie today.
and it's not, and I'll tell you something else. It's not Taylor Swift either. And however, Taylor Swift may go down as the biggest star of all time. That's possible.
There need to be a huge amount of slowing down of the population. I think she's the biggest star of all time because there's more people right now. Like, I just think that is true.
Okay. That's an interesting way to look at it. Here's how I look at it. The reason why I say that: she had a sold out concert tour, which is not like other people have to. Although the demand for those tickets drove ticket prices higher than pretty much anybody else who performs. So that's a good indication of her popularity. But then she goes and releases that same concert in movie theaters. And did you know that if you were to go see her, I've not done this yet, I'm sure I'm gonna with my daughter, but those aren't movie ticket prices that you go pay to go see her in the movie theater. I think they're like $25 to go see her. Like a movie's like 15, right? So they upcharge you to go see a movie, and it's sold out. People are paying it.
Okay, all due respect to Taylor Swift, she is the hottest shit in the world right now, and good on her. All I am saying is, she's got a couple of things going for her that previous artists did not have. Number one, the secondary market so strong that the ability to chart, the ability now for technology to say how much is somebody willing to pay for this ticket on the secondary market, let's charge it on the primary market, is something that exists now. So that drives those prices, and all that stuff's good for Taylor. But Frank Sinatra made movies, and people went to see the movies because Frank was in it. Turned out he was a good actor.
But they didn't pay double the price. They didn't pay double the price to see his movies.
But they didn't do that. Like, that wasn't something. It wasn't even conceivable to do that. I don't know.
I think you're using ignorance as an excuse for why these other people weren't that popular, because they were ignorant.
No, I'm saying they're equally
manipulate
as popular. No, I'm saying they're equally as popular. I'm saying the innovations on how to make money off of it, that could be Taylor. That could be Taylor's people. That could be other people connected who see it and said, let's use Taylor to try these techniques. What I'm saying is that those things were not necessarily things, but they used to have closed circuit TV things. I don't know who did those. I mean, that's how I saw the first Mike Tyson fight that I saw. Not the first one. I saw a Mike Tyson fight in a movie theater. It wasn't the price of a movie theater ticket. You had to pay something to go because they didn't have pay-per-view.
Right. But that was live. That was live. It wasn't, you didn't go pay a different ticket price to go see the rerun of the Mike Tyson fight.
But there are other concert events that are not live that are shown at the movie theaters that are not the same price as a movie theater ticket. It's hard to compare what they're using to make
she's the biggest star. She's the biggest star. I'm telling you.
Yes, but she's the
biggest. Listen, and you haven't even brought up the other reason. The other reason she's the biggest star is because Travis Kelce introduced her to all of us.
Thank you, Travis. Thank you, Travis. For those who don't remember, that is total sarcasm on Ed's part. Don't want him getting in trouble, because he got in enough trouble just us promoting that he might have said that Travis made her. That is.
Well, that's what's so
people were angry at you before they listened. They were like, "What?"
That's what's funny about that whole situation is that there's guys that are actually like really upset about that.
I know.
Which was the point of the show.
Which was the point of the show.
And we proved it.
And we proved it by promoting it that way. Yes. Absolutely.
Well, it's all stupid anyway.
Yes, it is stupid. One thing that's for sure, though, whether she's the biggest star ever because there's more people now, or she's the biggest star ever because she's just that much more popular than anyone ever could have been before her, we'll never know. But it is definitely true that she does not suck. The charm is that we suck. I'm Obi. That's Ed. Thanks for listening. to listen to us next week. Download, like, all that good stuff.